Because you're exactly right. I mean, he's now complaining about Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson halfway through.
Who he's definitely jealous of.
There's 2 pages just covering 2.5 pages. It's like, well, what the hell have they got to do with Rupert Murdoch?
Did they help break Britain? Did they? Tucker Carlson.
Well, I think his argument he seems to be making is that Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump have been broadly supported by Rupert Murdoch and parts of the British right-wing media, even though Rupert
support Trump.
And Rupert Murdoch fired Tucker Carlson from Fox News. But he complains in this that Rupert Murdoch gave Tucker Carlson a job, and with Tucker Carlson's position on Fox News, he used the opportunity to explain there was one particular news piece he took problem with, which was one where Sweden, they focused on Sweden and the problems that it was suffering with mass immigration, particularly of Muslim immigration, where they were coming into the country, making the place worse, creating no-go zones, increasing violence, and he doesn't have any arguments against the stats that Tucker Carlson is using or the points that he's making. Yeah, he just sidesteps it and says it's terrible.
Well, no, he's got. I just read it. He's got an even more pedantic way of getting around this, because Donald Trump said, "Look what's happening last night in Sweden." He's like, "Nothing happened last night in Sweden. It was the night before."
Again, the pedantry kicks in.
Yeah. There haven't been any hand grenade attacks in Sweden yesterday, so you're just wrong. And that's what the whole thing's going on about.
Yeah, and he also complains about the Daily Mail, citing figures of the very famous 1 in 5 Muslims were supporting ISIS and terrorists in general. And again, he doesn't actually have any arguments against it. He's just like, do the people really need to know this xenophobic bigotry? Well, yeah, actually.
No, you don't need to know that.
Yeah.
Do people need to know that 20% of Muslims in this country think ISIS were doing the right thing?
Yeah.
No.
And he also continually in this chapter accidentally includes loads of excerpts from Murdoch's former employees that make him sound like a really top bloke to work for.
Really?
Where there's just saying, oh yeah, he'll stand by you through anything. If you're on his side, he's on your side for life. He'll always have your back no matter what controversies come your way. And I was reading going, James, he sounds like a great guy. I think you've failed here.
Or James will just tell the teacher on you as soon as you do something he doesn't approve of. So.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's true, though, that loyalty is actually a right-wing virtue. To the left, it's actually a detrimental thing. They see it as antithetical to being principled, which is madness.
Yeah, if you look at the Heights 5 moral foundations, they're very, very low in loyalty.
Absolutely,
Sanctity.
Yeah.
And, what was the other one? I can't remember the other one now. Okay, so it makes Rupert Murdoch sound better just because he's trying to condemn him. And then I'm not a fan of Rupert Murdoch or anything.
No, of course. But if you want, as a right-winger, or even say you're a political neutral, if you're reading that book so you can get an objective idea as to what Rupert Murdoch has done, which deserves scorn, you're not going to get it.
Right, okay.
You're not going to get it. Other than maybe the Hillsborough stuff near the end. Because BritLibs, again, constantly complain about the way that The Sun, in particular, handled the Hillsborough disaster. And again, if you want a full rounded explanation of what happened, you're not going to get it.
Right.
So they're giving the Sun responsibility for something that was a mistake of the people running that stadium and the police.
Well, it's the reporting. It's the way that they reported it and the fact that it took them 15 years to retract, or the fact that some of the people who wrote some of the articles are still standing by the original statements that they were making at the time, which of course Rupert Murdoch is in full personal control of what these people believe and how they think and what they say.
He approves of every single word that he publishes across his media empire, of course. That's a fair statement.
Yeah, as the owner, he is also the omnipotent editor who can read everything being written under his name.
James O'Brien thinks he's a sort of like god figure. He knows all that's going on.
They treat him like one.
He knows everything that's going on. He reads everything. Everything is his word. It's all top down.
They do treat him like a god figure. It's really strange. I think because the BritLib can't really comprehend any sort of like godly force in the world, they transfer it over to people like Rupert Murdoch, except it's the demiurge.
They also don't get the sort of logistics of running that sort of organisation. It's all sort of very abstract. They don't think of how can one man control every word everyone who works for him says. They don't think that actually that's an impossible thing to do.
So chapter 2 is Paul Dacre. I actually don't know who this is.
Well, he's the
editor of Daily Mail.
Editor of the Daily Mail.
Right. Okay.
And it's just a regurgitation.
I hate him for all the same reasons I hate Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, the exact same thing. Again, one of the problems with drawing anything substantial from this book is that James O'Brien puts nothing substantial in the book. There's no arguments being made. It's a series of vignette anecdotes of what James O'Brien read in the newspapers about this particular figure. Who is the left-wing journalist that James O'Brien cites to write about all of these things? What did they say about it? That's what you're getting from this book. And again, he's very, very small-minded. He's very bad at explaining himself. And most of the chapter is moaning a bit about Brexit again. And I remember back when Brexit first happened and everybody was calling them Ramonas. Yeah. And I thought, oh, well, that's a bit, that's a bit strained, isn't it? But reading that book really made me understand why the phrase came about.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the next bit of any sort of interest comes from the chapter 4, because I mentioned Andrew Neil.
Yeah.
It's probably the best chapter because he's talking about all of the Tufton Street institutions, the economic NGOs and such, which actually does have an interesting point to be made, which is completely destroyed by the fact that he has no sense of fairness to how he's applying these standards. He just sticks them on the right-wing side, says this is bad, left-wing side when we do it. Perfectly fine.
Weirdly, I just happened to have turned to the exact page to prove your point.
Oh, go on.
He's talking about the BBC and is complaining about the, quote, manufactured necessity of balance. It's like, as if we need to hear the other side. I'm right on all things, they're wrong on all things. Why would we need their opinion? He's literally just saying it.
Well, he's a pure credentialist.
Yeah.
But the credentials have to come from the right institutions.
The left institutions.
Yeah, the left institutions to be considered legitimate.
I mean, he literally says that.
Yeah, I mean, in the Andrew Neil chapter, I would have really expected him to have some more complaints about GB News. There's not that much about GB News in there.
Really?
It's maybe a page or two near the end.
Right, okay.
So again, I was very confused at how rubbish a job he did of putting his own side's argument forward.
I think
I doubt he's watched.
He might have justified that by thinking, well, Andrew Neil disavowed GB News, so I'd look a bit silly if I then attacked him for his association.
Well, that's the thing, is that he seems to have some compliments for Andrew Neil, which is that he was he's a very intelligent man and had an excellent ability as a political interviewer, which presumably James O'Brien, like Tucker Carlson, is very jealous of.
He says that Jonathan Portis, the professor of economics and public policy at King's College London, said, with Andrew Neil as editor-in-chief and Fraser Nelson as the editor, The Spectator has, by Neil's own admission, published an open endorsement of a Nazi party. But that's not all. It continues to employ not just well-known anti-Semite and Nazi sympathiser Taki, whoever that is, but also the self-confessed racist liar Rod Liddell and the white ethno-nationalist Douglas Murray, and published assorted far-right provocateurs from Gavin McInnes of the Proud Boys to Thierry Baudet. While The Spectator also publishes many competent and professional journalists, it's impossible not to see this as a deliberate strategy to legitimise the far right for both ideological and commercial reasons. That is a hell of a statement.
Yeah.
Jesus.
You call Douglas Murray a white nationalist?
Yep.
The man who
a white
shilling for Israel more than anyone I've ever known.
But Rod Liddell is a self-confessed racist liar.
I
don't think that's what he's got in his Twitter bio. Racist liar.
Articles are just sort of jokey and silly, aren't they?
Rod might as well put that in his Twitter bio now with a little hyphen, James O'Brien.
But one thing that you point out, he hasn't got much on GB News. And I wonder if that's because of the recentness of GB News as a phenomenon. Because he's going back quite a long way in this. It's like in October 2009, Liddell did this. In 2014, I interviewed Fresh. So but what have you done in the last decade? Why is this all such old news?
Well, it's because James O'Brien is not actually a journalist.
Wow, that's a good point.
James
that's a good
James
point,
O'Brien
actually,
is clearly not a journalist. What he does is he gets articles from actual journalists and books that have already been written and then regurgitates them. Some of the pages are literally just full quotes of texts from other books.
Yeah. I mean, he says about Murray, if the white supremacist accusation seems a little strong, it's worth noting something he wrote in 2013. Yes, it's just insane. It's worth noting something he wrote in 2013. It's like, okay, but he's been way stronger rhetorically in the last year or two than he ever has been in 2013.
I mean, the same Douglas Murray that would falsely call people Nazis. Yeah. That Douglas Murray.
But compared to the Douglas Murray of post the Hamas attack on October the 7th, who's like, we can't have Muslims living in our country. It's like, one's a lot stronger than the other, but James O'Brien obviously hasn't been paying attention.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.